So a group of seniors in Florida, my mom is almost 80 years young, and a group of them were sitting around talking about their ailments. "My arms are so weak, I can hardly hold this cup of coffee," one of them said. "Yes, I know. My cataracts are so bad, I can't even see my coffee," replied another. "It's gotten to where I cannot hear anything anymore," said one in the loudest voice of the group. "I can't turn my head because of the arthritis in my neck," said a third, to which several nodded weakly in agreement. "I guess that's the price we pay for getting older," winced an old man as he shook his head. Then there was a short moment of silence. "Well, it's not that bad," one woman cheerfully said. "Thank God we can all still drive." Friends, while there comes a time when we can't drive, hopefully there'll never come a time when we can't laugh. And this week's Torah portion begins after something that I and the other Jewish men here do not remember, thank God, but which is the oldest ritual in Judaism, the rite of circumcision as a sign of the covenant. We men entered it as boys on the 8th day of life, but Abraham got this ritual started when he was in his 90s, a man ben zikunim, of advanced age. This probably explains why, as the Torah portion begins, it says, Father Abe was sitting in his tent after the circumcision rather than standing. God appears to Abraham, who's recovering in the tent, and Abraham then sees 3 men standing nearby, invites them in, washes their feet, prepares a meal for them. The men predict that at this season next year, Sarah will give birth to a son. Now, Sarah's 90 years old. She laughs, unable to imagine that a couple their age can ever give birth to a child. When the child is born, he'll be named Isaac, from the Hebrew root word for laughter. Years ago, while leading a sisterhood women's study group at Temple, I think it was about 20 years ago, I shared these biblical verses to demonstrate that it's never too late to have kids. I shared with them how Sarah gave birth to Isaac according to the Torah at age 90. I'll never forget the response of the ladies I was teaching. They said, "Good for Sarah, Rabbi, move on." There is a book entitled Judaism, Emmanuel Levinas, and the Feminine, that's authored by one of the great theologians, Rachel Adler, and one of the great scholars who earned her doctorate here at the University of Memphis, Claire Katz, member of Temple. She now teaches in Texas at Texas A&M. Sarah, she draws our attention to the context in which we find her laughing. Sarah has just been told that she'll give birth to a child and that this child will yield many nations. Upon hearing the news, as I said, Sarah laughs. And she laughs not simply because she is told that she will give birth at the age of 90. She laughs because she also understands what it will mean to give birth to the child. There's no immaculate conception in Judaism, ladies and gentlemen, which means that Sarah must first conceive the child. And to do that, Rachel Adler and Claire Katz observe, Sarah at the age of 90 realizes that my husband who's over 100 and I are going to have to do that again. Sarah's thoughts, as revealed in the text, move from having the child to the absurdity, the pleasures and the absurdity in conceiving the child. This isn't a stretch, friends, by the way. Don't tell the biblical literalists because this may throw them. But laughter, from the Hebrew word tzachak, as in Yitzchak, Isaac, is often associated with biblical sex. The king of the Philistines sees Isaac mitzachek, playing with his wife in Genesis 8. In Genesis 39:17, Potiphar's wife accuses that Hebrew slave Joseph, whom you brought into our house. He came to me, litzachek bi, to dally with me. And the use of tzachak, laughter, continues in 32:6 in Exodus in connection with the story of the golden calf, where the people sat down to eat and drink and then rose after drinking, litzachek. Now, you can read the English Bibles. I think they say to make merry. It leads the classical biblical commentators to envision a massive group thing. The traditional focus on Sarah's laughter in this story centers on the idea that Sarah is incredulous at the possibility of conceiving. But this interpretation overlooks her reference in Genesis 18:12 to enjoyment. The Hebrew word is edna, which literally means physical pleasure, but which most English translations, your literalists, have toned down from the literal meaning. It means pleasure in the sensual sense. So 3 chapters later, when Sarah gives birth to a son, she says, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears about this, especially the women, will laugh with me. More interesting, as former Memphian Claire Katz notes, is the fact that Sarah not only laughs, but she even names her child Isaac, which means one who laughs. So he becomes the literal embodiment of this miraculous thing that Sarah experienced later in life. Taking the Bible literally is therefore impossible for 2 reasons. First, the English translations that preachers blast are not true to the Hebrew. And second, it's probably a good idea to move beyond biblical laughter's literal association with sex. What is clear in the Torah, what is clear starting this week with Isaac, is that the age of laughter begins. Judaism does not believe that religion is off limits to humor. I mean, God must have a sense of humor. Look at us. And if God can help us bear our tragedies, God can also take our humor. Humor is a gift from God. After all, if our minds and hearts are gifts from God, then by God, so is the sense of humor God has implanted within us. And if we are to utilize all the gifts that God has given us in this lifetime, then religion without humor is blasphemy. God is the creator of laughter that is good, not laughter that mocks. Healthy laughter is a universal bond that draws all people closer. I mentioned this at a service recently. I learned from Sanjay Gupta on CNN that laughter therapy in other countries is no joke, because when you laugh, even if you fake it, scientifically it releases endorphins, reduces stress, but it is beneficial, it's healthy, and that's why in Iceland, instead of just yoga and Pilates and exercise groups, they have laughter coaches, and they make you laugh, even if you fake it, and at the end of the half hour, you're better for it. The rabbis of the Mishnah write, make your study of the Bible a regular activity, promise little, do much. V'hevei mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot. Receive all people with a joyful face, a smiling face. They weren't speaking of jokesters and jesters. They were speaking of people at work, on the street, the folks you'll meet after this service, whose faces bear a smile instead of a scowl, who face you with joy and not a frown, who get you breathing by laughing healthfully with a joyous remark, pleasant grin, or a beaming face. I was at a doctor's appointment at the West Clinic today, and this amazing surgeon, who's a friend, is a Catholic, and he said, "Rabbi, you know the difference between a Catholic mother and a Jewish mother?" He says, with a Catholic mother, she says to her child, "If you do that, I'll kill you." The Jewish mother says, "If you do that, I'll kill myself." It takes a second. But it was great to hear an oncologic surgeon do that. Laughter, my friends, is healing. In closing, why? Because I think our need for laughter, like love, is limitless. It doesn't diminish when a loved one dies. In consoling families in the wake of their losses, like today's or last week's, I've often been asked a question over the years, "Rabbi, how can I laugh again? How can I love again?" And my answer is, you're right. It's really hard to laugh now, and it may be hard to laugh for a while. But I think you probably will laugh again someday, and you must, because nothing would dishonor your loved one more than being sad all the time. Nothing would dishonor your aunt or uncle, your spouse, your parent, your sibling, your child, than never smiling or laughing. And that would be the greatest disservice. And every death leaves a scar, Elie Wiesel has written. This is a beautiful quote. Every death leaves a scar, Elie Wiesel has written. And every time a child laughs, it starts healing. Laughter is healing, and this is the week in the Torah when the age of laughter starts. Amen.